The text arrived at 11:23 a.m. on a Wednesday morning while I was reviewing acquisition contracts in my downtown office. My mother's name appeared on the screen, and I opened the message with the usual sense of dread that accompanied our communications. Amanda, I need to be frank with you. Please don't come to my birthday celebration this Saturday. Your presence literally lowers our property value. The neighbors have been talking and frankly showing up in that ancient car wearing those clothes. It reflects poorly on the entire street. You understand, don't you? This is a prestigious neighborhood. We have standards to maintain. I read the message 3 times, each time feeling less surprised and more resigned. This was who my mother was, who she'd always been. Image mattered more than family. Property values mattered more than relationships. I typed back a single word, understood. Enjoy your day. Her response was immediate. Thank you for being mature about this. We'll do something small together another time. Just us. Just us, where the neighbors couldn't see her disappointment of a daughter. I set my phone down and returned to the contracts spread across my desk. Specifically, the final acquisition documents for 847 Willowbrook Lane, my parents' house. They didn't know I'd bought it. They thought they still owned it, just as they'd thought they owned it for the past 3 months since the sale had closed. The paperwork had been complex, routed through multiple holding companies, but that was the point. My parents lived in their house with no idea their daughter was now their landlord. And as of this morning, I owned every single property on their street. 12 houses. $47 million in total acquisitions. The entire prestigious neighborhood they were so proud of belonged to me. I called my attorney, Patricia Winters, who'd been handling these acquisitions for the past 18 months. Patricia, it's Amanda. The final property closed this morning, correct? Yes, 847 Willowbrook Lane is officially yours as of 9 a.m. That completes the entire street. Perfect. I need you to prepare lease agreements for all 12 properties. Standard terms, but include the clause we discussed, the one about property standards and neighborhood prestige. You're sure about this? Your parents are going to be shocked. I'm sure. Deliver the paperwork to 847 Willowbrook Lane on Saturday morning, around 11 a.m. It's my mother's birthday. Amanda. They'll be having their celebration, the one I'm not invited to because my presence lowers property values. Seems like the perfect time to let them know who actually owns the property now. Patricia sighed. I'll prepare the documents. But for the record, I think you should reconsider the timing. Noted. Deliver them Saturday at 11 a.m. After I hung up, I pulled up the file on Willowbrook Lane. It had taken me 18 months to acquire every property on that street. Some through standard sales, some through carefully orchestrated negotiations, one through a complicated estate sale. The total investment was $47 million, which represented about 15% of my real estate portfolio. People thought I was crazy spending that much to own a single suburban street. They didn't understand it was never about the investment return. It was about control. About power. About being able to demonstrate to my family, finally, definitively, that they'd been wrong about me for decades. My name is Amanda Preston and I'm 34 years old. I own Preston Property Holdings, a real estate investment company that manages $320 million in residential and commercial properties across 3 states. My personal net worth is approximately $180 million. My family thinks I'm a struggling property manager who barely makes rent. This misconception started about 12 years ago when I was just out of college, working as an assistant property manager for a large real estate firm. My mother introduced me at a party as Amanda, who manages apartments. She said it with that particular inflection, the one that meant, isn't it sad she couldn't do better? I tried to correct her, explain that I was learning the business, that I had ambitions to build my own company. She patted my hand and said, "That's nice, dear," then moved on to brag about my older sister Lauren, who just made partner at her law firm. So I stopped correcting her. I stopped trying to explain. I just worked. I saved every penny, lived in a studio apartment, drove a 15-year-old Honda, and learned everything I could about real estate investment. Within 3 years I'd bought my first property, a small duplex. Then another. Then a 4-unit building. I grew deliberately, strategically, building a portfolio that generated consistent cash flow. I lived frugally while my properties appreciated. I reinvested every profit. By the time I was 30, I owned 40 properties worth $80 million. My mother still thought I was doing that apartment management thing. By 32, I'd crossed $200 million in property value. My mother told her friends I was still trying to figure out my career. Now, at 34, I owned $320 million in real estate, including the entire street my parents lived on. And my mother was uninviting me from her birthday party because my appearance hurt property values. The irony was so perfect it was almost poetic. Saturday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. and went to the gym in my building, the luxury high-rise I owned in downtown, where I kept a penthouse apartment worth $4.2 million. My family had never seen it. They thought I lived in a modest apartment in the suburbs, because that's what I'd told them years ago, and they'd never asked for updates. At 9 a.m. I called Patricia. "Are you ready for the delivery?" she asked. "I'm ready." "Are the documents prepared?" "All 12 packets. One for each property on Willowbrook Lane. I've included the standard lease terms, notice of ownership change, and the special provisions we discussed." "And the timing?" "My assistant will arrive at 847 Willowbrook Lane at exactly 11 a.m. Your parents are expecting a small gathering starting at noon, correct?" According to my sister's social media posts, yes. Small, exclusive, neighbors only. The kind of event I'd ruin with my presence. "Amanda, I have to ask one more time. Are you certain about this approach? There are gentler ways to reveal." "Patricia, my mother told me my presence lowers her property value. She didn't say, 'We'd prefer a smaller gathering,' or 'We're keeping it intimate.' She specifically said I hurt her property's value and the neighbors talk about me. There is no gentle response to that." "Understood. The documents will be delivered at 11 a.m. I spent the rest of the morning working from home, reviewing other properties in my portfolio, but I couldn't focus. I kept checking my phone, waiting. At 11:04 a.m. my phone rang. My mother. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hello. Amanda." Her voice was shrill with panic and confusion. "There's a lawyer at our door. A woman with documents saying we don't own our house. She says we're tenants now and we need to sign a lease agreement. This is insane. Tell me this is some kind of mistake." "It's not a mistake, Mom." "What? What are you talking about? You don't own 847 Willowbrook Lane." "I do. I bought it 3 months ago through one of my holding companies. You've been living in my property since June." The silence on the other end was so complete I thought the call had dropped. "That's impossible," she finally whispered. "We own this house. We've owned it for 20 years. We have the deed." "You had the deed. Past tense. You sold it to Riverside Holdings LLC in June when you refinanced. You thought you were just getting a better mortgage rate through a new lender. What you actually did was sell the property and enter into a rent-to-own agreement. As of this month, the purchase option expired. You're now officially tenants. You can't do this." "I already did. The lawyer at your door has all the paperwork. It's completely legal, verified by 3 different real estate attorneys and filed with the county. Your signature is on all the documents from June. We would never have sold our house. You didn't know you were selling it. The paperwork was complex, deliberately so. You thought you were refinancing. But you read the documents, or at least you should have read them before signing." My mother made a sound like she was choking. "This is because of the birthday party, isn't it? Because I asked you not to come?" "Read the documents, Mom. All of them. There are 12 packets. One for each house on your street. Because I don't just own your house. I own all of them. The entire prestigious neighborhood you're so worried about. It's mine. Every single property." "You're lying. Check with the lawyer. She has documentation for every property. Every single one of your neighbors is getting the same packet you are. They're all tenants now. Of me. The daughter whose presence lowers property values." I heard my father's voice in the background, demanding to know what was happening. My mother must have put me on speaker because suddenly his voice was clear. "Amanda? What the hell is going on?" "Hi, Dad. I've acquired all the properties on Willowbrook Lane. Including yours. You're receiving lease agreements today. You have 60 days to decide if you want to sign and stay or vacate." "You acquired, how could you possibly? You're a property manager. You don't have that kind of money." "I own a property management company, Dad. Preston Property Holdings. We manage $320 million in real estate. Willowbrook Lane represents about $47 million of that portfolio. I bought the first property on your street 18 months ago. The last one closed Wednesday. $47 million? My father's voice was faint. For the whole street, yes. Your individual property was $4.2 million. I paid cash. My mother found her voice again. You've been lying to us. For years. Pretending to be struggling when you're actually... I never pretended anything, Mom. You decided I was struggling. You decided I was an embarrassment. You told your friends I was still figuring things out, and seated me at the kids' table at family dinners and uninvited me from your birthday party because my appearance hurt your property values. I just never corrected your assumptions. Why would you do this to us? I'll let you figure that out. Right now you need to read those documents. Patricia Winters, the attorney at your door, will answer any questions. You have 60 days to sign the lease or find new housing. 60 days. We can't possibly, we have nowhere to go. You have options. Sign the lease at the new terms or start looking for another place. I'd suggest you start searching soon. The rental market in your area is quite competitive. My father's voice was hard now, angry. What are the lease terms? Standard for the area. $6,500 per month. First and last month due upon signing, security deposit of 1 month's rent. Annual increases of 4% tied to the Consumer Price Index. Standard maintenance responsibilities. Patricia has all the details. $6,500? We're paying $2,800 on our mortgage. You were paying $2,800 on your mortgage. Now you're tenants in my property. $6,500 is actually below market rate for a house that size in that neighborhood. I'm being generous. Generous. My mother's voice broke. You're destroying us. I'm offering you market rate housing in a prestigious neighborhood. The same neighborhood where my presence supposedly lowers property values. I heard sobbing, my mother breaking down. My father was yelling something about lawyers and courts and how this couldn't be legal. It's completely legal, I said calmly. Patricia has brought 3 independent legal opinions confirming everything. You can hire your own attorney to review the documents, but they'll tell you the same thing. I own the properties. You're tenants. Those are the terms. Please, my mother said through tears. Please don't do this. We're your parents. Yes, you are. And 3 days ago, my mother told me not to come to her birthday party because my presence lowers property values. Tell me, Mom, does it hurt to discover that the embarrassing daughter you excluded actually owns the entire street you're so proud of? I didn't mean. Read page 3 of the lease agreement, I interrupted. There's a section about property standards and neighborhood prestige. I thought you'd appreciate that given how important those things are to you. I hung up before she could respond. My phone immediately started ringing again. I silenced it and made myself a cup of coffee, then sat on my penthouse balcony watching the city below. Over the next 3 hours, I received 47 calls and 183 text messages. My mother, my father, my sister Lauren, various aunts and uncles who'd somehow heard the news. Everyone had opinions about what I'd done, most of them negative. Lauren's message was particularly pointed. What the hell did you do to Mom and Dad? They're hysterical. Mom's birthday is ruined. How could you be so cruel? I didn't respond to any of them. At 2:17 p.m. Patricia called. I've delivered all 12 packets, she said. Your parents were the most dramatic, but the other neighbors weren't thrilled either. Several of them are talking about hiring attorneys. They're welcome to hire anyone they want. The acquisitions are airtight. They are. But Amanda, I need to warn you. This is going to cause significant family damage. Your parents are devastated. They were comfortable devastating me by saying my presence hurt their property values. They'll survive this. What if they can't afford the new rent? Then they'll need to find housing they can afford. That's what happens when you become a tenant instead of an owner. Patricia was quiet for a moment. You know, in all my years practicing real estate law, I've never seen someone buy an entire street just to make a point to their family. It's not about making a point. It's about demonstrating reality. For 12 years my family has treated me like an embarrassment. Like the daughter who couldn't get her life together. They pitied me at best, dismissed me at worst. And all that time I was building something extraordinary. I wanted them to see that. Really see it in a way they couldn't ignore or dismiss. Mission accomplished. They definitely can't ignore this. After hanging up with Patricia, I finally looked at some of the messages. My father, we need to talk. In person. This is too important for phone calls. My mother, please Amanda. We can fix this. Come for dinner tomorrow. Let's talk. Lauren, you owe mom and dad an apology. And an explanation. What kind of person does this to their parents? My Aunt Carol, I don't know what happened between you and your parents, but there are better ways to handle family disagreements. This is cruel. Only one message was different. From my younger cousin Jamie, who I'd always gotten along with. Holy shit. You own a $320 million real estate company? That's amazing. Why didn't you tell anyone? I replied to Jamie, because they never asked. They just assumed. Her response was immediate. That's fair. For what it's worth, I think what you did was pretty badass. Your mom has been insufferable about that neighborhood. That made me smile. Sunday morning, my father showed up at my office building. I own the building and security called me for permission to let him up. Send him to the conference room on 30, I said. I'll be there in 10 minutes. When I entered the conference room, my father was standing at the windows, looking out at the city view. He turned when he heard me come in, and I saw immediately that he'd aged overnight. Dark circles under his eyes, rumpled clothes, the look of a man who hadn't slept. Amanda. His voice was hoarse. Dad. We need to talk about this. Hey. Talk. You can't evict us from our home. That house, we raised you and Lauren there. 20 years of memories. Your mother has her garden, her routines, her friends in the neighborhood. You can't just take that away. I'm not evicting you. I'm offering you a lease. If you sign it, you can stay. At $6,500 a month. We can't afford that on our retirement income. Then you'll need to downsize to something you can afford. That's what people do when their housing costs exceed their income. You're being deliberately cruel. I sat down at the conference table and gestured for him to do the same. He did reluctantly. Dad, 3 days ago, Mom texted me and told me not to come to her birthday party. Do you know why? She said you two had agreed it was better. She said my presence literally lowers their property value. She said the neighbors talk. She uninvited me from a family celebration because my appearance would embarrass her in front of the people she's trying to impress. My father looked uncomfortable. Your mother sometimes says things without thinking. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. She did. She meant exactly what she said. I embarrass her. Always have. The daughter who manages apartments instead of having a real career. The one who drives an old car and wears simple clothes. The disappointment. We never thought you were a disappointment. Dad, when's the last time you asked about my job? Actually asked beyond how's work. He was quiet. When's the last time either of you visited my home? You live in that apartment building you manage. We assumed. You assumed. You've been assuming for 12 years. You assumed I was struggling, so you treated me like I was struggling. You never asked, never checked, never looked deeper. You just decided who I was and treated me accordingly. If we were wrong, why didn't you correct us? I tried. 12 years ago when I started my company, I tried to tell you. Mom cut me off to brag about Lauren's law career. I tried again when I bought my first commercial property. Dad told me to be careful, like I was a child playing with money I didn't understand. After a while I stopped trying. It was easier to let you believe what you wanted than to constantly defend my success to people who'd already decided I was failing. We didn't decide you were failing. We didn't understand what you were doing. You didn't care enough to understand. There's a difference. I pulled out a folder with financial statements, property portfolios, business documentation. I own 47 commercial and residential properties. My company manages another 73 properties for other investors. I employ 32 people. I've been featured in real estate investment magazines. I've spoken at industry conferences. I've built something remarkable, and you missed all of it because you were too busy being embarrassed by me. He looked through the documents, his hands shaking slightly. This is extraordinary. Yes, it is. Why didn't you tell us? I just explained why. But the house, buying our house, buying the whole street, that's vindictive, Amanda. It's demonstrative. You needed to see who I actually am, not who you assumed I was. And apparently, it took me buying your entire neighborhood for you to pay attention. My father set down the documents. Your mother is devastated. She spent all of yesterday crying. She spent Wednesday uninviting me from her birthday because I lower property values. Forgive me if I'm not overly concerned about her being upset. She's your mother. She's the person who should have supported me, believed in me, been proud of me regardless of what car I drive or what clothes I wear. Instead, she spent 12 years feeling sorry for her struggling daughter while that daughter built a real estate empire. And when she had the chance to include me in a family celebration, she chose property values over her own child. He had no response to that. The lease terms are generous, I continued. Below market rate, actually. If you want to stay in the house, sign the lease. If you can't afford $6,500 a month, I can help you find something more suitable in your price range. I own properties all over the city. Some of them are much more affordable. You'd have us move to a cheaper neighborhood? I'd have you live within your means. That's what responsible adults do. After 20 years in that house. You sold that house, Dad. In June. You signed the paperwork. It's not yours anymore. It's mine. Those are the facts. He stood up, looking older than his 63 years. Is there anything we can do to fix this? Any way to make this right? You can sign the lease or find another place to live. Those are your options. I mean our relationship. Our family. I thought about that. Maybe. Eventually. But Dad, you need to understand, I didn't do this because I'm cruel or vindictive. I did it because after 12 years of being invisible to you, after a lifetime of being the disappointing daughter, I needed you to actually see me. Really see me. Not the version you invented, but the actual person I am. The successful, accomplished woman who owns more property than you ever dreamed of. I see you now. Good. Remember this feeling the next time you're tempted to make assumptions about someone based on their appearance or your own limited understanding. He left without another word. Over the next week, the family drama intensified. My mother called daily, alternating between tears and anger. Lauren sent increasingly hostile texts about my betrayal. Extended family members weighed in with opinions nobody asked for. The only person who stayed neutral was my grandmother. My father's mother, who was 92 and had always been sharper than anyone gave her credit for. She called me on day 6 of the crisis. Amanda dear. I hear you've caused quite a stir. Hi Grandma. Yes, I suppose I have. Good for you. That surprised me. Good for me. Your mother has been insufferable about that neighborhood for years. Acting like living on Willowbrook Lane made her royalty. Needed someone to take her down a peg. I smiled despite everything. Thanks, Grandma. That said, you can't leave them homeless. They're foolish, but they're family. I'm not leaving them homeless. I offered them a lease. At a rate they can't afford. At a market rate for the property. Amanda. I sighed. What do you want me to do, Grandma? Whatever feels right to you. But remember, you wanted them to see you. You wanted recognition. You've got that now. The question is, what do you do with it? After I hung up with Grandma, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about what she'd said. I'd wanted my parents to see me. Mission accomplished, they definitely saw me now. They saw the daughter they'd underestimated owned their entire neighborhood. They saw that their assumptions had been spectacularly wrong. But what was I accomplishing by rubbing their faces in it? On day 8, I called Patricia. I need you to draft revised lease terms for 847 Willowbrook Lane. Revised how? Keep all the standard terms, but adjust the rent to $2,800 per month, matching their old mortgage payment. Include a clause that the rate can be renegotiated annually based on their financial situation. You're giving them a below-market lease? I'm giving them affordable housing while they figure out their retirement finances. The original terms were to make a point. The point has been made. Now I'm being practical. What about the other properties on the street? Market rate for everyone else. They didn't tell me my presence lowered property values. You know your parents are going to see this as you backing down. I don't care how they see it. I care that I'm not actually cruel. I wanted them to see me, they do now. I wanted them to understand that their assumptions were wrong. They understand now. Making them homeless doesn't add anything except unnecessary suffering. I'll draft the revised terms. On day 9 I called my mother. She answered immediately. Amanda. Hi, Mom. I'm sending over revised lease terms. Rent is $2,800 per month. What you were paying on your mortgage. You can stay in the house. Silence. Mom. Why? Her voice was small. Because despite everything, you're my mother. And I don't actually want to see you suffer. I wanted you to see me, really see me, understand who I am and what I've built. You see me now. Mission accomplished. Amanda, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. I should never have said those things. About property values and the neighbors. That was cruel and wrong, Anne. Mom, let me stop you. You said those things because that's how you really felt. You can't apologize your way out of actually believing I was an embarrassment. What you can do is change. You should get to know me. Ask about my business. Visit my real home. See who I actually am instead of who you assumed I was. I want to do that. Your father and I both do. Then we'll start there. But slowly, Mom. This isn't fixed with one conversation and revised lease terms. This is going to take time. I understand. And Amanda, thank you. For the revised terms. For not evicting us. For giving us a chance. You're welcome. After we hung up, I felt something loosening in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the beginning of something that could eventually become forgiveness. 3 weeks later, my parents came to visit my penthouse for the first time. My mother cried when she saw it. The space, the luxury, the view, the undeniable evidence of my success. This is where you live, she kept saying. This is really your home. This is really my home. My father walked through every room looking at the artwork, the furnishings, the home office where I ran my company. He stopped at the window overlooking the city. I've been such a fool, he said quietly. Yes, I agreed. But you're trying to do better. That counts for something. Over dinner, which I'd had catered from an expensive restaurant because I wanted them to understand the life I actually lived, my mother asked careful questions about my business. How I'd started, how I'd grown, what my typical day looked like. I answered honestly, watching her face as she realized how completely she'd misunderstood my life. All those times we offered to help you financially, she said slowly. When we'd suggest you move back home to save money, or when we'd try to give you money for Christmas. I was worth more than you and Dad combined and you were trying to give me gas money. Yes. She put her face in her hands. We must have seemed so condescending. You did. But you meant well. You just had no idea who you were being condescending to. My father reached across the table and took my hand. I'm proud of you, Amanda. I should have said that 12 years ago or 5 years ago or last month. But I'm saying it now. I'm incredibly proud of what you've built. Thank you, Dad. That means something. Not enough, but something. Yeah. Not enough, but something. 6 months after the birthday party incident, my mother invited me to a small dinner party at their house. My house technically, though I tried not to think of it that way. Just close friends, she said. I want them to meet the real you. I want to introduce you properly, not as my daughter who manages apartments, but as my daughter who owns a $320 million real estate company. You don't have to do that, Mom. Yes, I do. I spent years embarrassed by you for all the wrong reasons. Now I want to brag about you for all the right ones. At the dinner party, she introduced me to neighbors who'd whispered about me, friends who'd pitted her for having a struggling daughter. She told them about my company, my success, the fact that I owned their entire neighborhood. And the best part, she said, her voice carrying across the dinner table. She had every reason to evict us, to punish us for how we treated her. Instead, she gave us affordable terms and a chance to rebuild our relationship. That's the kind of person my daughter is. Successful, brilliant, and more generous than we deserved. It was uncomfortable and earnest and probably embarrassing for both of us. But it was also honest, which was more than we'd had in years. Later, as I was leaving, my mother walked me to my car. My actual car, a Range Rover, not the old Honda I used to drive to family events. Thank you for coming tonight, she said. Thanks for inviting me. For real this time. Amanda, I need to ask you something. The text I sent, about property values and the neighbors talking. Did that really hurt you? I thought about lying, about brushing it off. But we were trying for honesty now. His mom. It hurt. A lot. Not because I cared what the neighbors thought, but because my own mother cared more about what they thought than about including her daughter in a family celebration. I'm so sorry. If I could take it back. You can't. But you can remember how it felt to be wrong about me and maybe apply that lesson to other people you're tempted to judge by their appearances. She hugged me then. A real hug, not the performative kind she used to give at family gatherings. I love you, she said. The real you. The one I'm finally getting to know. I love you too, Mom. It wasn't perfect. The relationship was still rebuilding, still fragile, still weighted with years of misunderstanding and hurt. But it was real in a way it had never been before. Because I'd forced them to see me. Not by explaining or defending or proving myself in small ways they could dismiss. But by buying their entire world and demonstrating, undeniably, that the daughter they'd written off was actually the most successful person in the family. I was Amanda Preston. I owned $320 million in real estate. I'd bought my parents' neighborhood to prove a point. And in proving that point, I'd somehow found a path back to something resembling a genuine relationship with my family. It hadn't been the plan. The plan had been demonstration, revelation, a moment of perfect irony where they realized the truth. What I hadn't planned for was what came after. The slow, awkward, painful work of rebuilding trust and connection with people who'd fundamentally misunderstood me for years. But maybe that was the real success story. Not the $320 million or the prestigious properties or the moment my mother realized I owned her neighborhood. Maybe the real success was building something true with my family after years of building my empire in secret. I'd spent 12 years being invisible to them while accumulating wealth and property. I'd bought their street to make them see me. And they finally did see me. And in seeing me we found a chance to know each other, really know each other, for the first time. My mother said my presence lowered property values. I showed her I owned the property. But more than that, I showed her who I actually was beneath her assumptions. And that revelation, painful as it was, became the foundation for something more valuable than any real estate empire. The truth. Finally, honestly, between us. And truth I'd learned, was worth every penny of those $47 million in properties.